Kia ora, I'm Marco Fon, and this is Life is Loading, a podcast where we delve into the challenges facing those in the quarter life stage. The brain drain. It's what people are labelling the increasing number of young professionals making the leap across the ditch for better pay and career opportunities. And the facts back it up. According to Stats NZ, the December 2024 year saw a net migration loss of 30,000 Kiwis to Australia. And while we have traditionally seen this loss, last year saw the largest for a calendar year since 2012. But with the cost of living making everything in New Zealand that much harder, can we blame them? A Consumer NZ investigation from last year found Kiwis in Oz enjoyed cheaper rent, food, power and living expenses, but arguably the most important, higher wages. So, if you make that leap, how do you begin to re-establish yourself in new surroundings? And what can you do to make that as seamless as possible? Joining us from Sydney is a former AM show, now 10 News reporter Emma Olsen. Emma made the move to Australia last year after the closure of News Hub made her short of a job in New Zealand. Emma, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. Let's take you back to the 5th of July last year. You found yourself without a job as all of News Hub, including the AM show, shut down. From there, you made the move to Australia to continue your reporting career. Can you talk us through how you came to the decision to jump to the ditch?
Of course. I had actually already been thinking about it before the news came about. So taking you back, my partner at the time, he was already over here in Sydney. So we were doing long distance, hated the long distance, and the idea was that I was going to move to Sydney anyway. But I was kind of just waiting for the right time because I was still loving my job. And I kept putting it off. And, that's the whole thing with moving countries, right? Everyone's like, oh, it's just not the right time. I don't know when the right time is. So that's where I was. And then this news came along and I was like, oh, well, I guess that's my cue, isn't it? And so from that news, I then started approaching companies over here. And because I was flying over every 4 weeks to see my partner, I just set up coffee face-to-face with a bunch of the news directors and things over here at the different companies. And then from there, I stayed in touch with them and I was very upfront saying, we've still got 3 months. I'd really like to see it out to the end, but I'd love to, sort a job after that. And I was very lucky with timing and having that relationship with these news directors that I ended up securing a job very early after we found out that news.
For
so
sure.
I wasn't the sort of person that was, telling everyone about it because it was such an awkward situation at work. So I really kept that under wraps. And then, ended up moving over the day after we finished. No, 2 days after. I think we finished on the Friday, the 5th, and then I moved over on the 7th, the Sunday, and then I started work on the 8th on the Monday. So it was a very seamless process for me, and I was very, very lucky in that sense. But I know a lot of people at News Hub weren't as lucky. So it was a bit of a bittersweet situation.
Super quick turnover, as you said, only a few days before your job, but I guess that's kind of, convenient. It was kind of always coming, as you said. Last year you said on the AM show, we are just getting into our careers and that's the saddest thing about it. And the other sad thing is that we are essentially being forced out of the country because there is no way of doing our dream careers. What's it like being a journalist in New Zealand compared to being a journalist in Australia? And how heartbreaking was that realization?
I think for me at the time, it wasn't so heartbreaking purely because I already knew that I wanted to make a change. I know it was incredibly heartbreaking for a lot of my colleagues, but I think it's more so heartbreaking now looking back onto it, especially because I know that one day I will want to move home. And it's like, will I be able to stay in the same industry? There's barely any jobs. And if I did get a job, it probably wouldn't be a great paying job. I'd have to sacrifice a lot in that sort of sense. I'd say it's a lot more heartbreaking now than it was at the time for me personally. But your first part of the question where you say, what's it like being a journalist in New Zealand as opposed to here? It is very much the same, although Aussies are a lot more brutal. I'll put it that way. They don't really take any shit, if I'm allowed to swear.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
You can cut that out, bleep it out if you need to.
It's a good way to describe it.
Yeah, so what happened is back home at News Hub, we were a family. We were all such a close-knit unit, which I absolutely adored. Like, that's what I really respect in a workplace. And when I moved over here, the company I started working for, it's such a beast. Like, it's a massive company. Has its perks, also has a lot of its cons. It definitely was not a family aspect like News Hub was. So that was quite a culture shock to me. And I really struggled with that. And I didn't last there that long purely because of that reason. I was just like, this isn't what I want to be doing. I don't want to be surrounded by this. Like, I want my family back, like my News Hub family.
Yeah.
And so I ended up I quit my job, not having a job to go to, because I was like, I just don't think I want to be in this industry anymore. And I took a month off. I took a long, hard look in the mirror and I was like, you know what? No, I do. I just need to try somewhere else. And then that's when I moved to the company I'm currently at, 10 News. And funnily enough, there's actually a lot of News Hub people at 10 News. And so it already feels a little bit like home in that sense. But it's also very much like News Hub, the whole company itself. Like, it is a little bit bigger, but it's also very family orientated and everyone has each other's backs and that sort of thing. So yeah, I guess it really depends where you go, but the big news companies here are renowned for being quite cutthroat.
Gotcha. Yeah, no, that is cool. And as you said, like, there's obviously some people from News Hub who have come over with you, and you know, you've still got that little piece of home in a way. The brain drain is a commonly used expression for tertiary educated workers moving abroad for better opportunities. From your experience, why is that such an issue?
I wouldn't say it's an issue. I would say for the short term, it's an issue. I think for the long term, a lot of Kiwis, they're very family orientated, like I was just talking about before, and they probably see it as they're doing their OE, they're going to come back. And while they're on their OE, they're going to get all this experience. So I think it is not necessarily an issue because they will eventually come back one day. So the people that do come back, it's great because they're going to upskill themselves while they're away. They're going to get all this world experience. And when they do come back, we're going to have these people that have all this experience, and it's going to be even better for our companies and businesses back home. So I think for the short term, it's an issue because, you know, all these people are leaving and we're like, oh no, what's left in New Zealand? But I think when they do, if they do, then it's going to be a great thing.
Yeah, and that's interesting you talk about that because, you know, obviously for young people, it's always attractive to go overseas and see the world and that sort of thing, or work in different places. One of the big draw cards for Kiwis moving to Australia is the better living conditions. The unemployment rate in Australia is 1% lower compared to New Zealand, and the average annual wage across the ditch is roughly $30,000 higher than it is in New Zealand. When it comes to supermarkets, there isn't a duopoly. There's so many of these factors that mean moving, you know, across the ditch is so attractive. From your experience, is the grass really greener over there?
110% it is. And I hate to say that. And a lot of people are like, oh no, you have your rose-colored glasses on. But I have been here for over a year now. My rose-colored glasses are definitely off. And I just see that over here, they do everything bigger and better. Like you said, there's no duopoly with supermarkets. Food shopping, a lot cheaper. It's not like crazy cheaper, but it's definitely cheaper. And I'm the sort of person who loves my fruit and veggies. Like fruit being like $2 as opposed to $8 like home. I'm like, oh, I could live here for the rest of my life purely for that reason.
So good. I think I bought grapes for $10 the other day.
Oh, that's just ridiculous to me. Like, you need to leave. You need to come here. But yeah, you say pay $30,000 more. I was very lucky. I swindled a good paycheck when I came over here. I know a lot of people do. And so that was very, what's the word? Well, I guess you could say exciting, because when I was back home, I was not saving barely any money. It was almost impossible to. So the fact that I can do that here is really exciting, because then, you know, you can go and explore more because you have more money to work with and that sort of thing. So I think saving's one of the most exciting things for me here as opposed to back home, which I couldn't do. But yeah, you think about the fact that over here, there's a lot more money within businesses and the government and that sort of thing. And so they have more money to throw at different events and whatnot. So there's just so much more going on, so much more to see and do. And yeah, I think that's just a lot more, exciting.
Easier. Yeah. So the expectation versus reality kind of situation, obviously we hear here, like over in New Zealand, Australia is the place to go, you need to make the jump of all of these things. But was there anything kind of at first value that shocked you that was different, maybe the cost of living? Because you live in Sydney at the moment, is that correct?
Yeah, so I'm in Sydney, so rent prices are ridiculous, I will say that.
Right.
A lot more expensive than back home, probably double the price of Auckland. So I was very lucky when I moved over here. My ex-partner, I moved in with him. So we were splitting rent. It was probably just less than what I was paying in Auckland, purely because we're splitting it. Now that I'm not with him and I'm in my own space, I'm paying normal Sydney prices. So you'll be looking between $400 to $500 on average for a room, which is quite up there. But if you work it out with what you get paid, it is essentially better than what we'll be paying back home. So that's not really too much of a shock. I was kind of expecting that when I came over. One thing that was a shock was like the price of going to the doctor. Like we don't have ACC over here, not because we're Kiwis, but Aussies don't have it either. So you'll be looking at about $100, $120 to go to the doctor. So it's quite, like you're paying an arm and a leg to go, even with if you have physio issues, like the physio was so much more expensive. I had a referral for an MRI the other day because I have a foot injury. And that would cost me $300, whereas back home it's free. So the healthcare over here was quite the shock. And even if you have private health insurance, it doesn't cover things like doctor visits and whatnot. So that's one thing that people should be thinking about when they come over.
Gotcha. And I guess, as you said, it's all like sort of checks and balances. You might be paying way more for rent, but for instance, if your wage is a lot higher, you can afford to do that sort of thing. Once you'd made the move over to Australia, how did you reestablish social circles and things?
Well, like I said, I was with my ex-partner, and so he kind of introduced me to a lot of his friends, so I was very lucky in that sense. But I was also unlucky because I became very comfortable with that, and I wasn't making necessarily my own friends. And so it wasn't until I had broken up with him that I, joined a touch team and made friends that way. I moved into a new flat, made friends that way. And, it very slowly but surely starts to grow. So, I found myself in a position after breaking up with him that I, was like, I don't have any friends. Like, I don't have any friends of my own. And it was quite a hard time. So, I'd say, just getting yourself out there, getting uncomfortable, moving into a place where you know absolutely no one so that you can make friends that way. Joining sports teams, really just going out and using the energy that you do have to make new friends. It's quite hard at this age, but it can be done.
For sure. It's definitely a daunting process. For instance, I'm from Nelson originally, even moving down to Christchurch, it's a big new city, and I can't imagine what it would have been like moving to Australia, having an even bigger city that you have to move to. It's an overwhelming process for most as it is. But what tips would you give to make that move as seamless as possible?
I think just really researching before you make the move so you know what you're in for. Like I said, I didn't know anything about, the prices of healthcare. That's not that big of a thing. At the end of the day, you will have to pay that kind of anywhere. But I'd say tips is, researching, definitely getting a job before you move over. I know it can be easier said than done, but knowing that you've got that locked in and you're going to have an income is such a big thing. Like I have had so many friends move over, not having a job, not having accommodation sorted, and they have struggled like there's no tomorrow. Some have even ended up moving back because of that. So I'd say if you can sort a job and accommodation before you come over, those would be my biggest tips, because that's such a big thing. And when it comes to money stresses, I don't think there's anything worse. So locking in a job so that you have some sort of steady income, that would be the biggest thing.
You've shared a lot about your journey on social media, sometimes being quite open and vulnerable. There's a quote here: although it may look like I'm living my absolute best life, since moving to Sydney, I've never felt so unsure of who I am as a person. If you don't mind talking about this, Emma, can you elaborate on this and help those people listening sort of resonate with those struggles you faced when you were moving overseas?
Yeah, I think I touched on it a little bit, but this was more so where I was in a place where, just broken up with my ex-partner. I kind of came to the realization that I didn't have heaps of my own friends here. My job wasn't going as I thought it was at the time. And so I just kind of had like all these factors being thrown at me at the same time, which I was like, whoa, like, is this the place I need to be? Is this who I want to be? That sort of thing. So yeah, it's hard to give advice. I'm definitely on the other side of it now. Like, I'm super happy with my job. I'm super happy with my living situation. I've got a good group of friends here now. But it just takes time. I think that, that would be my advice, is give it a good shot. Lots of people, they'll give up straight away. Like, I definitely considered it. I considered moving back home. I was like, I don't think this is for me. But I rode the wave. I rode it out and eventually ended up where I am now, and I couldn't be happier. So yeah, it's definitely a time game. Things are not going to be easy from get-go. Like, you're moving to a whole new country. You've got to, build those new foundations with friends, with your job, with where you're living, all those sorts of things. It doesn't just happen tomorrow, like, you've got to give it time.
For sure.
That would be the biggest thing.
For sure. And that all being said, if you did have your time again, having the opportunity to move over, what would you do differently?
Ooh, I would not have moved in with my ex. I know lots of people won't be in that situation, so it won't really apply to them.
Yeah.
But I think if you say you have a friend rather than a boyfriend over here, don't move in with them. Move in with people you don't know, because then you're going to make friends off the bat, like, that is such a big thing. Feeling like you have a good support system that's not people you already know, like,
yeah, branch out and make
sense.
New connections. I like that.
Yeah.
I really like that.
Yeah.
I guess you've already answered this question, but will you ever move back to New Zealand, and what sorts of things, I guess, will bring you back to New Zealand that, you might feel like your time's not up in Australia, but what are the sorts of things that New Zealand can offer that Australia doesn't have for you, or is supplying you right now?
Like I said before, I probably will move back home, and that is purely for the reason that I want a family one day, and I want my kids to be close to their grandparents. I want to easily be able to drop them off there, or my grandparents be able to come over and hang out with their grandchildren. Like, I'm very a close-knit family person. So I think that's my main thing. I'm not as, I don't want to say I'm not as career driven as I once was, but that's not the only factor taking me places anymore. So it wouldn't necessarily be up to a job, in a sense, to bring me back home. I think it's just like, when I feel the time is right to, maybe start a family one day, that I want my kids to grow up in New Zealand and kind of have the lifestyle that I did in that sense. So I think that's probably the biggest thing. But I'm still so incredibly young. That's like definitely in the far future. And I probably have a lot more traveling to do, may even live in a different country before then. So yeah, I don't know if that even answers your question.
Yeah,
but.
yeah, it does. And I guess that actually leads on to another one. You talk about living in different places and living abroad. What does the next 5 years sort of look like to you? Do you think you'll be in Australia? Will you be somewhere in Europe working, or what does that look like?
Yeah, it's hard to say exactly at this point in time, but there's a potential move to London on the cards. When I was at broadcasting school in your position, I always wanted to go to London. I always wanted to work for the BBC. That was always a dream of mine. So I'm kind of at the point now where I'm like, if I don't do it, I'll be kicking myself for it in the future. So yeah, I'm so incredibly happy where I am at the moment with my job, with where I'm living. I don't see myself moving anytime soon, but I definitely know that I'll probably want to tick that off before I do end up moving home one day. So yeah, potentially London. We'll see.
Awesome. That's so cool. And with this entire journey in mind, and moving and going to new places and overseas, What would be the one piece of advice for those considering to make the move for better opportunities?
I say do it. I just say do it. Just don't think about it too much. Like, if you have that little itch that you want to scratch, do it. Like, it'll be hard, but at the end of the day, you're going to grow so much more as a person if you do take yourself outside of your comfort zone, and that can only work wonders for you as a person. So I say do it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today on Life is Loading, Emma. We've really enjoyed having you on the show, and thank you very much.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Cheers. That's it for this episode of Life is Loading. This podcast is part of the Kokako Network. It was produced by Marcus Allen, Alexandra Bogdanova, and Alice Homer. It was edited by Dom Hamilton, with graphics by Anaya Pasha and Ella Dickens. For more content from Kokako, head to our website kokako.media or catch us live on 96.1 and Channel 200.